I stood in the doorway of our new home, the home that Richard and I had dreamt of for years. My heart swelled with pride at the thought of the life we were about to start here. The house was still echoing with the sounds of emptiness, waiting to be filled with our laughter and memories. But that dream was about to be shattered in a way I never could have imagined. As I unpacked a box in the kitchen, I heard the doorbell ring. "I'll get it," I called out, wiping my hands on my apron. I opened the door expecting to see a neighbor or maybe a delivery person. Instead, there stood a young woman, probably in her mid-20s, with a confident air about her. "Hello, can I help you?" I asked, puzzled. Before she could answer, Richard appeared behind me. "Ah, you're here. Come in, Isabella," he said cheerfully, brushing past me to welcome her inside. Confused, I followed them into the living room. "Richard, who is this?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Emma, meet Isabella. She's my girlfriend," he said, as casually as if he were talking about the weather. I felt the ground beneath me shift. "You're what?" I managed to choke out, my voice trembling. Isabella looked around the house, commenting on everything with an ease that made my stomach churn. "It's a lovely house. The kitchen is so spacious, and oh, look at those big windows." Richard beamed at her. "I'm glad you like it. Emma, isn't it great that Isabella approves of our new home?" I stood there, frozen, as the weight of his words sank in. This was not a misunderstanding or a bad joke. My husband, the man I had trusted and loved for a decade, was openly admitting to an affair in our own home. "But the house, it was for us," I stammered, my mind racing. Richard shrugged. "Things change, Emma. I've found someone who truly understands me." Isabella laughed, a light, carefree sound that felt like a slap in my face. "Oh, don't be so dramatic, Emma. It's just life, you know." Their words cut through me, but they also ignited a fire within me. I wasn't going to be the victim in this cruel play of fate. "You think you can just replace me? In my own house?" I said, my voice gaining strength. Richard looked at me, his expression cold. "It's not just your house anymore, Emma. It's ours." I knew then that this was not the end of my story. It was the beginning of a battle for my dignity, my home, and my future. A battle I was determined to win. Leaving Richard and Isabella in the living room, I retreated to the sanctuary of my bedroom, the walls of which seemed to mock me with their newly painted cheerfulness. As I sat on the edge of our bed, now just a piece of furniture in a house that no longer felt like mine, the reality of Richard's betrayal sank in. Tears streamed down my face, not just for a lost marriage, but for the life I thought I had. The next few hours were a blur. I packed a suitcase with mechanical movements, my mind numbed by shock. Each item I placed inside felt like a piece of my heart being torn away. I couldn't bear to stay in the house a moment longer. Arriving at my parents' house was like stepping into a different world. The familiar warmth and comfort contrasted sharply with the cold betrayal I had just left behind. My mother opened the door, her face lighting up with joy, which quickly turned to concern when she saw the suitcase and my tear-streaked face. "Emma, what happened? Why are you here with your suitcase?" she asked, her voice filled with worry. I tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. The dam of emotions I had been holding back broke, and I collapsed into her arms, sobbing uncontrollably. She led me inside, her presence a soothing balm to my shattered soul. It wasn't until much later, when my sobs had subsided into sniffles, that I managed to recount the day's events. I told her about Isabella, about Richard's betrayal, and the painful realization that my marriage was a lie. My mother listened in silence, her eyes reflecting the storm of emotions I felt. Anger, sorrow, disbelief, they all flickered across her face as she processed what I had said. "When did it start, Emma? Did you have any suspicions?" she finally asked. I shook my head, feeling a fresh wave of pain. "I don't know, Mom. I thought we were happy. I was so blind." She took my hand, squeezing it gently. "You're not blind, Emma. You trusted the man you loved. There's no shame in that." Her words were a small comfort, but they couldn't quell the storm raging inside me. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and above all furious. The image of Richard and Isabella laughing and planning their future in the house that was supposed to be ours filled me with a burning desire for revenge. "What are you going to do, Emma? Are you going to let them get away with this?" my mother asked, her voice firm. I looked up, meeting her eyes. In them, I saw a reflection of the determination growing within me. No, Mom. I won't let them get away with this. Richard and his lover will pay for what they've done. The following weeks were a whirlwind of legal consultations and late-night strategy sessions with my mother. We pored over property laws and divorce statutes, seeking loopholes and strategies to turn the tables on Richard. My mother, once a paralegal, became my ally in this battle of wits and law. I returned to the house unannounced, my resolve as solid as the walls around me. Richard and Isabella were in the living room, their laughter echoing through the hallway. They froze as I stepped in, their expressions a mix of surprise and irritation. "Emma, what are you doing here?" Richard asked, his tone dismissive. "I came to talk about the house and our divorce," I said firmly, my eyes never leaving his. Isabella scoffed. "Still hung up on that, are you? Move on, Emma." Ignoring her, I focused on Richard. "This house is in my name. Legally, you have no claim to it." Richard's face hardened. "We built this house together, Emma. I have every right to it." "But legally, you don't," I countered, feeling a surge of confidence. "And as for the divorce, I'll make sure it reflects your infidelity." Isabella laughed, a harsh sound that grated on my nerves. "You think you can intimidate us with legal threats? Grow up, Emma." Richard stood up, his posture tense. "You're out of your depth here. Just sign the divorce papers and leave us be." I smiled, a cold, calculated expression. "I'm not here to make your life easier, Richard. I'm here to claim what's rightfully mine, and if you think I'll walk away quietly, you're sorely mistaken." The look of shock on Richard's face was satisfying, but it was just the beginning. I knew this was a long battle ahead, and I was ready for it. As I turned to leave, I looked back at them, their faces a picture of disbelief and annoyance. "This is my house, and I will fight for it. And Richard, you'll regret the day you decided to betray me," I said, my voice steady and strong. As I walked out of the house, I felt a sense of power I had never experienced before. I was no longer the victim in this story. I was the architect of their downfall, and I would make sure Richard and Isabella paid dearly for their betrayal. Armed with legal advice and a newfound determination, I began to dismantle Richard's life piece by piece. My first move was to freeze our joint accounts, cutting off the financial lifeline he had been so comfortably relying on. I watched, almost detached, as Richard's facade of control began to crumble. A few days later, I received a call from him, his voice a mix of anger and desperation. "Emma, what the hell do you think you're doing? You've frozen our accounts." "That's right. Richard, you seem to forget that half of that money is mine," I replied, my voice calm and steady. "You can't just cut me off like this. We need to discuss this," he demanded. "Discuss? Like how you discussed your affair with me?" "I don't think so," I retorted. Richard's voice grew louder, more frantic. "You're ruining everything. This is petty and childish." I could almost see him pacing, his world spinning out of control. "Petty? Childish? No, Richard. This is me taking control. You made your choices, and now you'll live with the consequences." I hung up, feeling a rush of adrenaline. For years I had played the part of the supportive, unsuspecting wife, but those days were over. Next, I turned my attention to the house. I consulted with a lawyer and initiated proceedings to evict Richard and Isabella. The legal documents were delivered to them, and I savored the sweet taste of vengeance. Richard called again, this time his voice laced with a hint of fear. "You're evicting us? You can't be serious, Emma." "Oh, but I am. This house is in my name, and I don't recall inviting you and your girlfriend to stay," I said. "You can't just throw us out on the street," he protested. "Watch me," I replied coldly. The days that followed were a testament to my resolve. Richard tried to negotiate, to bargain, to plead, but I was unmoved. My heart had turned to stone against the man who had betrayed me so callously. The day of the eviction arrived, and I stood outside the house as Richard and Isabella left, their belongings in tow. Isabella shot me a venomous look, but I met it with a triumphant smile. "Enjoy your new life, Richard. You've earned it," I said, my words dripping with sarcasm. As they drove away, I stepped into the house, now empty of their presence. It was a hollow victory, but a victory nonetheless. I had taken back control of my life, and it was just the beginning. Richard and Isabella had underestimated me, and they were now paying the price. With Richard and Isabella out of the house, I focused on the next phase of my plan. I started by changing the locks and installing a new security system, erasing every trace of Richard from what was once our shared space. The house, which had been a symbol of our life together, was now solely under my control. My lawyer and I then began the process of negotiating the divorce settlement. I insisted on a meeting with Richard, wanting to see the impact of my actions face to face. The day of the meeting, I arrived early, composed and ready. Richard walked in, a shadow of his former confident self. His eyes met mine, and for a moment I saw a flicker of the man I had once loved, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared, replaced by bitterness and resentment. "Emma, let's be reasonable about this," he started, his voice strained. "Reasonable? Like how you were reasonable when you brought your lover into our home." I countered sharply. He shifted uncomfortably. "That was a mistake, I know, but we can still settle this amicably." I leaned forward, my gaze unwavering. "Amicable is off the table, Richard. You lost that option when you decided to betray me." The negotiations were tense, with Richard trying to salvage whatever he could. But I was unyielding. In the end, we reached a settlement heavily in my favor. Richard would have to liquidate most of his assets to meet the terms. As he signed the papers, his hand trembling slightly, I felt a sense of satisfaction. This was more than just a legal victory. It was a moral one. After the meeting, I received a call from Isabella. Her voice was high-pitched and frantic. "Emma, you can't do this to us. You're destroying our lives," she cried. I replied coldly, "Your comfort was never my concern, Isabella. You and Richard made your bed. Now you get to lie in it." "But we have nothing now. How could you be so heartless?" she wailed. "Heartless? You expect sympathy from me? I'm giving you exactly what you deserve," I said, hanging up the phone. In the weeks that followed, I watched as Richard's life unraveled. His financial woes, compounded by the divorce settlement, left him struggling to keep afloat. Isabella, once so confident and carefree, became a frequent figure in heated arguments outside my lawyer's office. I had taken back control, not just of my home, but of my life. Richard and Isabella were now mere players in a game they had no hope of winning. The tides had turned, and I was the one setting the course. The months following the divorce were a testament to the change in our fortunes. I rebuilt my life, slowly filling the empty spaces in the house with new memories, while Richard's world seemed to crumble around him. One day, I received an unexpected visit from Richard. He looked disheveled, a far cry from the confident man he once was. His eyes had a desperate look as he stood on my doorstep. "Emma, please, we need to talk," he pleaded. I crossed my arms, blocking the doorway. "What is there to talk about, Richard?" "It's about the settlement. I can't afford it. I'm drowning in debt," he said, his voice breaking. I felt a pang of something that might have been pity, but it was quickly overshadowed by the memory of his betrayal. "That's not my problem, Richard. You should have thought about that before." He took a step closer, desperation etching his features. "I was wrong, Emma. I know that now. But this is too much. I can't survive like this." I looked at him, the man who had once meant the world to me, now reduced to a shell of his former self. "Survive? Like I had to when you shattered my world? You're just tasting a bit of your own medicine, Richard." Richard's face twisted in a mix of anger and sorrow. "Is this what you wanted, Emma? To see me destroyed?" "This is what justice looks like, Richard. You made your choices, and now you're living with the consequences," I replied. He stared at me, the realization dawning on him that there was no sympathy to be found here. With a defeated look, he turned and walked away, his shoulders slumped. As I closed the door, I realized that the satisfaction I had expected to feel was muted. Watching Richard's downfall was a hollow victory. It didn't bring back the years of trust and love that had been lost, nor did it erase the pain of betrayal, but it was a necessary closure. I had stood up for myself, fought back against injustice, and reclaimed my life. It was time to move on, to leave the past and its pain behind. In the quiet of my home, I knew that the battle was over. I had won, not just against Richard, but against the helplessness that had once threatened to engulf me. It was a victory, not of revenge, but of resilience and renewal. The final act of my retribution came unexpectedly. Richard, now a shadow of his former self, reached out to me again, but this time it was different. He needed my help. We met at a coffee shop, a neutral ground far from the memories of our shared past. Richard was late, and when he arrived, he looked more haggard than ever. Emma, I'm in trouble, he said without preamble, his voice laden with a fatigue I hadn't heard before. I raised an eyebrow, sipping my coffee. Trouble? What kind of trouble? It's Isabella. She's pregnant, he confessed, avoiding my gaze. The news didn't surprise me as much as his reaction to it. And how is that my problem, Richard? He swallowed hard, the lines on his face deepening. It's not just that she's pregnant. She's demanding money, a lot of it. She says if I don't pay, she'll make sure I never see the child. I listened, my expression unreadable. So the woman you left me for is now blackmailing you? How poetic. Richard's eyes met mine, a flicker of the man he used to be shining through his desperation. I don't know what to do, Emma. I've lost everything. I can't afford to lose my child, too. There was a time when his plea would have tugged at my heartstrings, but that time was long gone. You expect sympathy from me, after everything you've done? No, not sympathy. Help. I need your help, Emma, he said, the words seeming to cost him his last shred of pride. I considered his request, the irony of the situation not lost on me. Richard, once so sure of himself and his decisions, was now at my mercy. But I wasn't the same woman he had left. His problems were no longer mine to bear. I can't help you, Richard. This is the life you chose. You have to deal with the consequences, just like I did, I said, my voice firm. Richard looked defeated, his shoulders slumping as he realized that there was no help to be found here. He nodded slowly, a resigned acceptance in his eyes. As he left, I watched him go, feeling a sense of finality wash over me. This was the end of our story, a story that had started with love and ended with betrayal and retribution. I sat there for a long time, lost in thought. My journey had been painful, filled with betrayal and heartache, but it had also been empowering. I had found strength I never knew I had, and I had come out on the other side, stronger and more resilient. Richard's downfall was a stark reminder of the consequences of betrayal, but it was also a reminder that I was no longer defined by his actions. I was my own person, free from the shadows of the past. As I left the coffee shop, I felt a sense of closure. The chapter of my life that was Richard was finally closed, and a new chapter was waiting to be written. A chapter filled with hope, strength, and the promise of a new beginning. As months turned into seasons, I found myself embarking on a journey of self-discovery and rebuilding. The house, once a symbol of shared dreams with Richard, gradually transformed into a sanctuary of my personal triumph and newfound independence. One evening, as I sat in the living room surrounded by the new decor that reflected my tastes, the doorbell rang. Hesitantly, I opened the door to find Isabella standing there. Her appearance drastically changed. Gone was the confident, carefree woman. In her place stood someone who looked defeated and weary. "Emma, I need to talk to you," she said, her voice lacking its former haughtiness. I was taken aback but composed myself quickly. "What do you want, Isabella?" She took a deep breath, her eyes not meeting mine. "I made a mistake, a big mistake. Richard's left me, and I'm alone with a baby on the way. I have nowhere to go." The irony of her standing on my doorstep, seeking help, was not lost on me. "And you think I'm the person to help you? After everything?" Isabella's eyes filled with tears. "I know I have no right to ask you for anything, but I'm desperate. I've lost everything." I looked at her, seeing in her the reflection of the pain and betrayal I had once felt. But where Richard had ignited a fire of retribution in me, Isabella's plight stirred a different emotion. "Isabella, the choices we make define us. You made your choice when you got involved with a married man," I said, my voice steady. She nodded, a tear rolling down her cheek. "I know, and I'm paying for that choice now. I didn't know where else to go." I sighed, feeling a sense of closure and compassion that surprised me. "I can't change the past, Isabella, nor can I forget it, but I believe in second chances. I'll help you, but not because of Richard or our past. I'm doing this for your child, who shouldn't suffer for our mistakes." Isabella looked up, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "Thank you, Emma. I don't know how to repay you." I shook my head. "You don't owe me anything. Consider this a new start for both of us." As she left, I closed the door and leaned against it, feeling a weight lift off my shoulders. Helping Isabella was the final step in letting go of the bitterness and pain. It was a gesture not of forgiveness, but of release. Standing in my home, I realized that I had not only survived the storm, but emerged stronger. I had faced betrayal, fought for justice, and found a way to move forward with grace and dignity. I walked to the window, looking out at the night sky. The stars seemed to shine a little brighter, and I felt a sense of peace. The chapter of revenge had closed, and a new chapter of hope and resilience had begun. In that moment, I knew that no matter what the future held, I was ready for it. I had reclaimed my life, my home, and my identity. And with that knowledge, I stepped into the future, unburdened and free.